Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. Israel faces increasingly sophisticated disinformation campaigns and recent hybrid threats from Russia. Understanding how these challenges affect public trust, security, and democratic institutions is more urgent than ever. Now, to shed more light on all this, with the European Parliament's approach and strategies being implemented to counter these threats, we're now joined by Raffaella de Marte, head of the Decentralized Media Unit at the European Parliament. Thanks so much and welcome to Warsaw.
Thanks, Sascha. Very glad to be in Poland.
Let's start with setting it all up. Looking at the threats currently, we hear it all the time, what's happening from Russia, from Belarus. How prepared is the European Parliament at this moment? What are the steps being taken right now?
I think we have taken very huge steps in the last years because this has been piling up for some time now, and of course the war and aggression of Ukraine has been an eye-opener for all of us. So since then all the steps have been not only reinforced but even a much speedier pace. First of all, I think the initiative we need to mention is this EU Democracy Shield that the Commission has launched in the beginning of the term, and now we are building up the steps to make it happen with a center for resilience and for sharing information, and the approach not only at the institutions, a European institution level, but with all EU member states. The Commission has just presented their concept of this Center for European Intelligence, and the Parliament supports it, and we are going in that direction to gather all the experts, all the knowledge we have, all the data, because we know data gaps is one of the problem with disinformation. So, of course, when we unite the knowledge of all member states, it's becoming a much more coordinated approach. This is one. I think the other very important side of the coin is the strength of Europe is to have a resilient and strong independent media and civil society. So we cannot fight disinformation just by debunking and responding to any totally unfounded news that come from parts of the world that try to interfere with our democratic space, but we have to strengthen our media, which is really an important space for healthy public debate, and civil society. And these are strong in Europe. So Europe, as institutions, we have to support them and to make sure also via the funding of the next EU budget that these institutions stay free, stay independent, and stay democratic.
I mean, the European Union, it's a complex organism, if we can call it that, but I think also in particular what the European Parliament is doing, the voice of the people, that also carries with it a lot. In all of that, all the member states, all these different groups, as you said, the Shield for Democracy, etc., how do you see all this in terms of challenges? I mean, it's a big challenge to get all this through. So where do you see some of the most pressing challenges right now in all that?
I mean, when you see the 2024 report from the UN that put misinformation and disinformation as #1 global risk to which we are the less prepared, you know that this is not an institutional challenge, but is a whole of society challenge. And that's why I think as European Parliament, we have to be a kind of bridge, not only with political level, with governments, and with, let's say, institutional partners, which are very important, but also, as I said, in order to boost our capacity to resist and to build this resilience. Me personally, I think media literacy is very important. We are producing a series of educational content that explains how this works, because we don't want to enter in the narratives who is right, who is wrong, but to show the tactics, to show that this is a very well-oiled deceptive machine, and that uses very concrete narratives, but also very emotional triggers, divisive arguments, and that in the end, the end goal is to fragment and to break our society and our cohesion. So I think this is the fact that we are not taking it from the institutional side, but as a whole of society, and that the parliament in that, as you said, is a bridge between the citizens and the rest of the EU institutions.
But as a bridge, as you said, it's vital. And tell us a bit more about what, in your mind and with the experts you speak to on institutional level, what have been some of the most successful tools, campaigns that really resonate with citizens, where citizens can know, okay, this is disinformation. What's really working well in the toolbox right now?
I think that you see very big differences in the countries that have experienced this for many years, and their civil society is much more ready to recognize, to debunk, or even to pre-bunk. For example, the Baltic states, in this for us, they are a model, they are example, and we are all learning from that. So, for example, what they do with the pre-bunking elections is something we applied in the European elections 2024. So to foresee the arguments that will be put out as a disinformation and pre-counter them, so that people have access to correct information even before being exposed to disinformation. The other thing I mentioned is to have a toolbox that deconstructs not so much the narratives, because narratives evolve and you can enter in this opinion, but the tactics. For example, to explain that the way of sowing the doubt is to divide enemies from friends, to always put division and to then amplify these divisions, to twist the reality in a certain way that you are always aggressing a part of the society against another. So all this, exposing the tactics and talking of this, not only with journalists, expert academia, but students from the younger age. We use our school program to really make an awareness raising effort on disinformation. And I think, these are long-term efforts, so I cannot give you the magic wand, but I think we live in a resilient society in Europe, and we have the tools that will develop this capacity to fight disinformation.
Raffaella, you mentioned also the kind of, let's say, pre-debunking tools that are there. You mentioned the lessons learned is highlighted by the Baltic states. I imagine Poland is also among the highlights there of what they know what threat is going on.
Yes.
How receptive in your mind so far, it's an ongoing process and it's fairly fresh, but how receptive are, let's say, civil society groups, the public, when you speak to others who are not that close to Russia and Belarus, when you deal with people, in more Western parts of Europe, in France, in Spain, in Southern Europe? How's the perception there?
I think the aggression against Ukraine has showed a level of unity at the European level that was unthinkable before this would happen. If you told me 5 years ago that we are going to have a European program for defense, or that we are going to start sanctioning Russia with 19 packages of sanctions since 2022, I would have thought this is unbelievable. But it happened, and Europe stays strong and united in favor and with Ukraine. Yesterday as European Parliament we voted yet another resolution saying that there is no peace in Ukraine without Ukraine, that there cannot be a peace plan that is not just and not sustainable. And this has been for 3 years now a continuous and I wouldn't say unanimous, but very broad majorities, both in the European Parliament and among member states. Of course, then sensitiveness are different in civil society. I am Italian. I often engage with groups of journalists, but also citizens, explaining why this is something that concerns us all. But of course, we are not afraid of Russia passing the Alps tomorrow. This is clear. This is not.
Well, they're crossing the digital Alps, as we say all the time, right?
Exactly.
And that's my next question as well, of how prevalent now with social media campaigns, if that's Instagram, if that's TikTok, all these different platforms. What is Parliament and what is your division doing in terms of also making sure that that's, let's say, secure, that's make sure that citizens have the right tools to make sure to debunk disinformation from Russia and Belarus?
I mean, I totally agree on the digital Alps, and this is what I try to explain, that this is not classic war, but a very hybrid war. And in our case, we have laws that are protecting us. And Europe is the only power in the world that has put together a set of rules in order to reign over this, digital Far West, where basically platforms have developed a free space, which is not always, let's say, controlled by the freedom of expression, but by deceiving intentions. So the Digital Services Act, the Artificial Intelligence Act, the law on political advertisement and political targeting, these are all the pillars that the European Union has put together in the past years to protect our digital space, to protect our citizens, not only from disinformation, but also from illegal content, from whatever threats can be veiculated on those platforms. Of course, now we are trying to implement those laws, and it's not always easy and smooth, the dialogue with the platforms, but as you see, there are steps being done, platforms signing a codes of conduct, some platforms, of course, going maybe a bit farther than others, sometimes fines from the European Commission. So we have the laws in place. It will take some time because, as you know, I mean, Europe is complex, but at least we do the things in a democratic way and at our pace, but in a resilient way. So I think the laws are the main protection for our citizens from this situation.
Yeah, and as you said, it's an ongoing journey, it's a complex one, but it's one that all these different stakeholders are part of, and the European Parliament, of course, along that journey. Look, thank you so much for coming into the studio here in Warsaw. I really appreciate all those insights. That was Raffaella de Marte, Head of Decentralized Media Unit, European Parliament. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And thank you for joining us here on World Talks, but stay tuned. There's much more right here on TVP World, so don't go away.